Yellow. Playing a couple slow rounds of Fortnite to relax. And as the title would suggest, talk about a comparison between modern AAA games that are out and getting ready to come out, and then you have free-to-play games in Pacific like Fortnite. Now, in the past, there were clear differences between the different styles of games. You had AAA games where you would spend your money outright to get a game in its complete package. And you had free-to-play games which instituted some sort of grind in order to encourage people to spend money on in-game items in order to give themselves some sort of advantage over other players, or even just to make the grind a little less grindy. Also a nice treat here and there in cosmetic DLC and such. However, that's changed quite a bit now, hasn't it? You got started with AAA games with DLC packs, where you could get additional maps, additional story plots, and items in the game to make the game more fun, give it a little bit more longevity. However, then that changed, and then the first season passes got introduced. Now, there are similar things to that in free-to-play games, like the Battle Pass system in Fortnite, which is fairly nice. And then you have to consider with these free-to-play games that they need a means of monetization because you're not paying for the game upright. For them, the investment is in the long-term playability and people coming back and spending a little bit here and there. Well, with the AAA games, they used to get all their financing from the sales of the copies of the game itself. However, that's changed, where with the DLC packs and the new battle passes and season passes and such, you sit there, you buy a copy of the game, and then you pay a price equivalent to the game to get a season pass in order to get the DLC packs later on as a long-term investment. You give that extra bit now so you don't pay for it later. Although some particularly predatory games, which will go unnamed here, will sit there and still put out DLC you have to buy separately of the season pass, which is inherently predatory of a practice, but you know, as long as people keep buying, they ain't going to change their ways. I mean, if you know the cow's still producing milk, why are you going to turn it into steak? You know what I mean? However, with the overlay between AAA titles and free-to-play games now, the only real difference is the AAA game is you're paying considerably more for upfront in order to get everything you need, and the free-to-play you just kind of pay over time. Unless you really want to drop some money on it, well, I wouldn't advise that, but if you want to do it, you do you, man. Don't always agree with it, but hey. But now both AAA games and free-to-play games institute a lot of the same money-making schemes, including the things like loot boxes, which essentially operate like in-game slot machines. You put a little money in and you get a chance to get something nice or nothing at all. I mean, you get a bunch of junk and you just spent like over $100 in order to try to get something good. Now, there is the chance you will get something good, but in the case of a slot machine, it's the same thing. Sometimes you get a small prize, sometimes there's no prize, and sometimes you win the big bucks. So what's happened in my particular case is I've stopped really buying a lot of AAA games. You know, if I'm going to spend money on a game continually over time, might as well be a game I know I'll get some sort of advantage out of it. Or I just feel like I'm getting more bang for my buck. And if I have to pay a down payment of like $60, then another $60 for, say, you know, season pass, and then got to still pay for other DLC, and then there's loot boxes which can give you potential advantage over others, you know, I just don't see the point in playing. I can just play a free-to-play game and get some similar experience with no upfront costs. To me, that's a much better choice. Now, there is, the fact that a lot of the times AAA games will put like really massive budgets into the initial launch. So there's a lot of good AAA games out there. I'm not knocking them. But for the most part, from a financial standpoint, why would I want to buy a game I want to be spending several games worth of money on later, when I can just get a game that starts out free and just spend whatever I want on it? Now, there are AAA games that I do play and do keep buying the sequels. I admit, I'm part of the problem. So is everyone else who just keeps spending money on these games with these predatory practices. However, I feel that I get more out of free-to-play games like Fortnite. Yeah, I don't always like the fact someone can potentially outshine me, but, just by sheer merits of whatever they got. But Fortnite, I think, balances out really, really well. And other free-to-play games as well. I recently pre-ordered, a AAA title, and I plan to play that quite a bit when it comes out, but I'm still going to keep coming back to games like Fortnite, because they just seem to have a much more long-lasting effect. I mean, with these AAA titles, I'll sit there and I'll play the game for like a year tops after spending all that money, and with the loot boxes and all that, it just over time gets less and less fun. Well, with games like Fortnite, I can just keep playing and grinding, and if I want to spend a little, I'll spend a little. So, I can see myself in 4 years still playing Fortnite. But, to be honest, with a lot of these AAA games, largely I can't. I'll play for, like I said, a year, maybe 2 if I really like it, but in the end, I feel like I'm getting a better dollar out of free-to-play games. Now, I'm not saying AAA games aren't worth investing in, because there are some good ones out there. But the increasing predatory practices in them, with predatory loot boxing, which is simply gambling for video games. And then you have, season passes, which luckily fewer games are coming out with. However, that doesn't preclude the fact that they may try it again the moment they think they can. The people making these games, the developers, people forget their primary goal is to make money now, not necessarily a great, well-balanced product. By the time they release one game, they're getting ready to work on the sequel, which is probably going to have a lot of the same practices. And I can't really say that, I would enjoy a lot of these games much later. Now, there is some signs that there would be legislation against things like loot boxes, but I don't see a lot of that coming, because these industries are huge. The gaming industry is this big, multi-billion-dollar industry, man. It's just, I don't see their practices changing unless people stop buying. And there is still good titles coming out, despite the fact they have these predatory practices. There's a lot of AAA games I find worth playing, even though they have all this other aforementioned predatory financial practices in them. Now, unfortunately, that does mean, I find a lot of franchises I used to love playing all the time, I just can't really, pick up anymore. I went from buying, several AAA titles whenever they came out to there's maybe 1 or 2 I'm interested in. I really only buy one whenever a group of them comes out, the one that looks the most interesting. Now, like I said earlier, you do you if you, want to keep, going at it. But effectively, the primary differences between the AAA titles and the free-to-play games like Fortnite is Fortnite Zero upfront cost, as I mentioned earlier. And then you just pay as you need to or want to. And then you got the AAA titles, which you just turn into money pits after a while. However, I can understand, loot boxes, season passes, and a large amount of DLC and other items to purchase in-game through microtransactions when it comes to free-to-play games like Fortnite and other ones like it. Because, well, at the end of the day, that is their bread and butter. It's how they make their money to keep the game going. Now, I'm probably going to play Fortnite for the next few years. And if it's, Fortnite 2 rounds the corner, I'm probably going to play that. Because I can see myself playing, games like Fortnite and other ones like it for years at a go. But a lot of these AAA titles, there's franchises I used to buy every time a new game would come out in that franchise. But now I just can't see myself doing that anymore. It just got too cost prohibitive for me as an average gamer. However, with Fortnite, I just spend a little here, spend a little there, and I get on with my life. I'm going to probably see myself playing games like it for years and years to come. And right now in the market, these AAA titles have gotten so predatory, I can't see myself doing that no more. I'm probably out of this next big batch of AAAs, there's only one I'm actually going to get. I'm going to enjoy it, it's in a franchise I love, but after about a year or two, I'm going to probably end up just going back to playing Fortnite. Alright, well, that's going to be all for now, and thank you for your time. Like, share, and subscribe, and this will be uploaded to my personal YouTube channel if interested, at Douglas Scott Rivenbark on YouTube. Alright, see you around!